Welcome to the Education Corner, a podcast by Education Choices magazine.
Education Corner podcast would like to welcome Mr. Rory Vokes-Dudgeon, head teacher at Abingdon House School. Abingdon House School is part of the Cavendish Education Group. It's an independent day school for pupils between the ages of 5 to 19 with specific learning difficulties such as dyslexia, dyspraxia, ADD, ADHD, and autism spectrum disorder. Their campuses are centrally located across South Kensington and Marylebone, and Abingdon House School offers a nurturing and supportive environment in which to support the challenges faced by students with special educational needs. We're thrilled to welcome you to our Education Corner podcast. Could you start by telling us a bit about yourself and your path to becoming a head at Abingdon House?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me, Chloe. It's really nice to be here and be able to talk to you about Abingdon and special needs in general. A little bit about myself. Well, I suppose if I just talk about my journey to becoming head, I started at university with a psychology degree. So my real interest came from understanding the needs of special needs students and really looking into in depth why behaviours happen. And that led me towards education. I didn't really know where I was going to go within education, whether it was going to be educational psychology or whether it was going to be teaching or maybe therapy in some way. But as soon as I got into a school, it became very apparent. I was very fortunate when I came down to London. It was at the time when free schools were opening up and I got involved in a very new school. I only had 12 pupils. It was focused on speech, language and communication needs. It gave me an opportunity to understand individualized learning, and I wasn't part of a big cog. I was very much a member of that school and able to really get to know the students and the systems and the structures. That's what gave me the bug for education. It wasn't therapy. It wasn't educational psychology. It was teaching, and it was being with the students, really. And that sort of student-led approach is what has continued through for me. I went away and did a maths PGCE. That was my subject. I worked in mainstream, and I enjoyed working with the students in mainstream, but it wasn't my passion. It wasn't giving me the same satisfaction. I always found myself gravitating towards the lower sets and working with students who really struggled with maths, but also struggled with maths anxiety and really were finding their life in the maths classroom hard. There's often a negative stigma towards maths in general in lots of schools, but particularly in those lower sets. And I enjoyed working there. So that's what led me back towards special needs education. And again, I feel very fortunate. My first teaching job was at a school called St Marylebone Bridge School, which is in Queen's Park, northwest London. And it was in its first few years, but it had been set up with a really truly integrated therapeutic approach to special needs education. One that had at the heart of it speech and language therapy, but also the education side of things. It worked with a trauma-informed approach to behaviour, so all about getting to know the students, put the students first, making sure it was a safe environment for any student to come in and learn the skills that they needed to access the curriculum. It was really ambitious. It was very supportive of new staff. And for that reason, I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to lead the maths department, to develop my understanding of dyscalculia and work with the BDA there and develop our teaching in a really concrete understanding for the students, looking at conceptual understanding. From there, I worked with our Key Stage 3 students pastorally as well. So I was kind of combining the academics with the pastoral before moving on to senior leadership. I'd spent about 8 years at St Marylebone Bridge School. I had a really fantastic time there, learned an awful lot for some great professionals before moving on to Abingdon House School. And this was just about 3 years ago as the senior deputy head, in a really interesting time for Abingdon, because it was clearly an already very successful school being led by Tanya Moran and was doing some amazing things to the point where it was able, after that first year, to expand. It was a one-site school, and we've now got 2 sites. We've got our prep school separately in South Kensington and our senior school and college at Marylebone. And it's been about developing our vision and our ethos as a 2-site school and making sure that we're able to support all of the students with that holistic approach to learning, whilst also from right at the beginning, putting the students first, putting the students at the centre of everything we do with individualised learning. And then at the start of this year, started my journey of headship. So it's my first full term of being a head teacher. I'm really enjoying it. The challenges have been there already, but it feels like it's been a really enjoyable first term. Culture, the staff are really buying into what we're doing, and you're seeing the progress from the students. At the end of the day, that's what's important. It's the happy students that are making progress that makes everything worthwhile.
Abingdon House is part of the Cavendish Education Group. Could you tell us more about Cavendish schools and Abingdon then more specifically as a part of that?
Yeah, really interesting. Actually, the Cavendish Education Group, and it was one of the things moving into Abingdon House School that I had the most questions about. Cavendish Education Group is currently 7 schools across 13 different campuses. The thing that really drew me into Cavendish, and I think is what is special about it, is that it's the understanding that there is no one size fits all approach to SEN education. All of the schools are unique, and it puts at the centre each child, and then in growing that, the cohort of the children. There's a lot of collaboration between the schools to be able to support. There isn't a culture of competition. It's about finding the right school for the right student. So we're very open as to Abingdon. We're the right school for a certain style of student, a certain style of learner, but not for everyone all of the time. It's a great opportunity to work in a group of schools where we can be open and honest with each other as head teachers, and we can support families and really put them first. So it's about making sure that the families find the right school at the right time for their child. As Abingdon, how we fit into that, as you said earlier, we're a school for students with specific learning difficulties. So that encompasses quite a range of needs: autism, ADHD, dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, genetic conditions. We work from 7 to 19. We have our prep school and our senior school. All of our students work within national curriculum levels. So they can be from year 1, and then we go up to offering 3 GCSEs and a range of other qualifications to go alongside that. The other schools within the Cavendish Group will offer slightly different things. It will be based not just on the qualification offer, but it can be the professionals that they have in the building. It can be the style of students that they work with. So you will see very different environments across the Cavendish Group, but they all really follow this ethos of child-centered approaches, making sure that the students are progressing holistically. The vision and the 4 C's that Cavendish work by are creativity, competence, confidence, and character. So really just putting forward the holistic approach to teaching and learning, which will lead to better outcomes.
I think you've more or less covered this, but the main entry points to Abingdon House, they obviously don't begin until 5. Can students come at any point from then?
It's a different type of model. We don't necessarily have generic entry points. With the nature of special needs and the way that students' profiles emerge over time, and also the fact that it can take some time for parents or schools to identify needs as they develop, what we do is we have many entry points throughout our school. So they can come in at year 3, they can come in towards the college end of things as well. We run phase, not age classes. So we don't have a year 7 group, a year 8 group. We try and create classes which are put together based on the students' academics, their social ability, their style of learning, the therapeutic need, and then to some degree age. We wouldn't want to have a very young student with a very old student. That would be inappropriate to group them like that. So we might group by key stage, but it's a different focus on making sure that we can effectively reduce barriers to learning, which is going to mean that they can access the curriculum that little bit better and hopefully see an increased rate of progress. Now, that means that students can come to us at any point between 5 and 19. So entry points is something that an independent thing for the students.
Do most pupils at Abingdon House in the prep school stay with you all the way through to year 11 and 13? Or do some possibly manage to develop skills that mean that they can rejoin mainstream?
Just like the entry points, the exit points are also individualized. And it might be that students stay with us just for a couple of years. Others will stay with us for a much longer period of time. Our hope and our belief is that through our style of education, we'll reduce the barriers to learning, which are meaning that the students can't currently access mainstream education. And through reducing those barriers, the students will be able to access the curriculum in a better way. That will mean that some of our students will hopefully be able to return to mainstream. That is a flight path for some of the pupils here. Some of them will stay with us for longer, and we've created a qualification curriculum in our senior school, which means that they're able to achieve really positive outcomes academically. Some of them, their needs will develop as well. And it might be that our school isn't the most appropriate school for them after a period of time. And we may be able to, as I said earlier, move a student onto another special needs school. So that might be within the Cavendish Group. And we have looked at transitions that will mean that they can continue their journey and their flight path effectively. So exit and entry points and flight paths within SEN education and Abingdon are individualised.
You've talked a lot about the school already, but what is the ethos and your aims and hopes of the pupils in their time at the school?
We talk about meaningful outcomes. Meaningful outcomes is quite a broad term. There's a reason for that, and that's because our education is holistic. Meaningful outcomes for our students can be that they will return to mainstream. That's a fantastic outcome. It might be that they achieve fantastic qualifications and they get a range of GCSEs and other qualifications that mean that they can move on to a college provision. It could be that we're supporting them on their confidence. We've had students with significant anxiety that have managed to go up on stage and perform in Shakespearean plays, which is amazing to see. And you see just the pride that comes not just from the pupil, but also from the families when they see their children being able to succeed in that way, which may not have felt like it was possible before. It could be about independence. A meaningful outcome could be that a student is now traveling independently to and from home. And that independence journey is the outcome that we're really focusing on for a certain student, thinking about their life skills and their social skills, making sure that they can really make progress. Those meaningful outcomes, they're dotted throughout a child's journey. For me and at Abingdon, we try and avoid thinking about just the next step. And we try and look at what is the student going to be like at 25? What are they going to be like at 30? How can we make sure that that's the meaningful outcome? That they're happy, that they're accessing the workplace, and that they are being really successful members of society.
And there's obviously a wide range of SEN schools available, each for different purposes and with a different provision. Can you kind of explain where Abingdon fits into this as a whole?
It's a really wide range. I think that that's sometimes something that is a misconception, that special needs education is just one type of school. And in fact, special needs education in itself is so diverse. Now, picking a school for a parent is a real challenge, and it can take a little bit longer because there's so many different types of special needs schools. If I start with mainstream schools, we have a good understanding of the different varieties of mainstream school, whether it's independent or state, large, small qualification offers. There are also what I like to call non-designated special needs schools. Now, that means that they may not say that they're a special needs school, but they're a school that accepts students with educational health and care plans or with diagnoses of special educational needs and will offer a wider spread of qualifications. They will have some support for well-being, for development of independence and social skills and things like that. But within a mainstream setting, they tend to have smaller classes. Now, within special needs schools themselves, you get schools which have different needs, specific profiles that they cater for. So, for instance, within the Cavendish Education Group, we have schools like Abingdon House School that cater for predominantly dyslexia, dyscalculia, and dyspraxia. We have schools such as the Homewood School or Heathermount School, which caters specifically for autism spectrum disorder. And we have schools like the Chelsea Group of Schools, which is specific for social, emotional, and mental health. So it can be that they're specific for certain need types. It's also important to know that different schools, even within those specific need types, will have different professionals within them. So it might be that your child needs to access occupational therapists and speech and language therapists, in which case a school like Abingdon House School is perfect because we have those on site. It might be that they need to access psychodynamic therapy, in which case there'll be schools that have those professionals on site and have integrated approaches there. It might be that there's a physio need that needs to have a physio on site to be developing that area. So the professionals is another area that is important to understand what is available to each student. Beyond that, there are schools called MLD schools. So for moderate learning difficulties, these will still work towards qualifications often, but also have a focus on independent living. And then you have a set of schools which are more for the severe and more profound needs. And there will be schools that focus predominantly on that. I think one thing for me to also mention just on this topic is special needs schools will often have a range of streams. So they may cater for multiple styles of learner. And it's important to research and be open to the fact that as long as the stream is there and is right for your child or is right for a certain student, then the school should be catering for them. They may also be catering for a different style of learner as well. And that is absolutely all right, as long as it's an individualized style of education that is going to be right for your learner in that specific stream.
Makes little sense. When choosing an SEN school, what difference do you see for pupils, certainly? How do you see it benefits them, their outcomes and their well-being?
This is a really passionate point for me. I think it's a relatively, for want of a better phrase, old-fashioned belief that special needs education is limiting students' prospects. And I genuinely believe that's not the case. And actually, you can be doing the opposite. If you find the right school at the right time, what you can do, as I've mentioned, is reduce barriers to learning, which mean that the students can access the academic curriculum that much better. Now, as soon as the students can access the curriculum, then they'll be able to make progress at a higher rate, which will lead to improved prospects and outcomes. I read somewhere recently that making sure that a student with special educational needs has the appropriate accessibility to a curriculum is just as important as making sure that a student with physical needs would have a ramp into a classroom. They just need to be able to access the curriculum in order to be able to make progress which is appropriate for them. Now, an additional part of that is that all of the research talks about early intervention having the biggest amount of impact for students. So the earlier that they can access special needs education, the higher the likelihood that they may have the positive levels of progress that could mean to you return to mainstream later on. And actually, the earlier that you catch these things, the more that the strategies will be embedded throughout the student's life, and they'll be able to then access a more mainstream curriculum.
And what does Abingdon House offer to support pupils? I mean, obviously, we've talked about academics and accessing the curriculum and the different things that you offer. But outside of that, what other kind of skill sets does Abingdon House offer the pupils? Life skills, going forwards?
Life skills is exactly where I would start with that. We have occupational therapists that integrate their strategies throughout all of our lessons, but they also teach a specific life skills lesson. Now, that can be about making sure that the students understand their own regulatory zone so that they're able to remain calm in different situations and they have strategies to maintain a level of calm and regulation. But also it works on independent strategies that they'll need to be able to take into the wider world. That all then feeds into another side of the school, which is based on how do we make sure that the skills that they're learning within our four walls are able to be transferred into the outside world. So we have opportunities for our students such as residentials, and we try and make that a progressive residential curriculum from them doing things within school to going on residentials, which might be just within the London area. And then we're developing up to we've got a residential that's going on to the Isle of Wight to spend a few days there, which our students are really looking forward to in our senior school. And it's a great opportunity for them to practice their life skills that they've been learning in school in a really meaningful way, not just about making sure that their own self-help and those kind of skills of washing, bathing, making sure that they're getting to sleep, but it's also time management. We work on the students being able to organize these types of trips in their own group so that they're learning those skills about managing time and managing budgets and making sure that they're developing there. We also work really specifically on confidence and making sure that the students can socialize. That's a really important part of our curriculum to make sure that they can access friendships and relationships as they get older. And then we also have things like after school clubs. So we also have a huge curriculum around that in our prep school. We're about to be able to offer ballet, which is really exciting. We're offering music composition as well as a sports after school club. And in our senior school, we're actually doing a podcast, which will rival yours. And we're offering British Sign Language, which is a great skill for our students to be learning. It's not one that they necessarily need to communicate, but it's a growing need in the world. And it's great that they have understanding and acceptance of these kind of things and that they're able to access British Sign Language. Yoga, in terms of those interests, we're a central London school that I'm proud to say we offer horticulture, which was a really lovely development this year. And then everything to do with exercise and making sure that we promote that. That's really important for me. All of the statistics, unfortunately, around obesity in special needs students as they grow older is something that we want to be able to challenge, and really putting effort into creating an intrinsic motivation and an enjoyment of active lifestyles that can filter into the outer world is important to us at Abingdon.
Of course, pastoral and behavioural support is important in any school. How does Abingdon House implement this?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really important part of things. And for us, it's about making sure that we're making a long-term difference in the students' lives and their approach to managing themselves in various different settings. As I said, the hardest skill for a lot of our students and a lot of students in mainstream education is that application and transference of skills outside of school and into the wider world. We really try to take a trauma-informed approach and utilize positive behavior support. Obviously, we have to have boundaries. We have to have consequences when people make mistakes. But I always talk about those as being sticking plasters. The students know that they've made a mistake and hopefully that won't happen again. But what we really need to focus on is the root cause of any kind of behavior. Behavior is a communication. And it's our vision to make sure that we build relationships and build a safe space for our students to learn how to communicate their feelings appropriately. It gives them an opportunity to learn appropriate behaviors, to learn how to access the community, how to behave in a workplace, as well as having a meaningful life post us. As I said, those meaningful outcomes at 25 and 30 really start with us at Abingdon and making sure that pastorally they feel comfortable, they know how to access the outside world appropriately, and they're able to be successful adults.
For parents whose children have SEN or additional learning needs, communication and support from child's teachers is obviously very important. How does Abingdon House work with and support the pupils' families?
It's really one of the most important things, and what we try and talk about at Abingdon is the team around the child. It's not just school, it's not just the therapists that we have, but it's important to make sure that the parents are on board as well and know that it is one big team that's working in the benefit of the students. So there's a few ways that we support this. We try and create consistency from home and school. So we'll use parent workshops. We had a really successful parent workshop at the prep school this term, actually, that was led by our therapy department on how to support students' regulation and how to support their social interaction at home. We were able to give the parents resources that they can take back into their home environment, adding that level of consistency. It's all about overlearning these strategies for the students and being there to support the parents in this journey of education. It's not just about us doing the education, they do the home life. We really need to be dynamic in making sure that we share as much information as possible. And I think that having a child with special educational needs can feel isolating. It feels like you're in a world that's set up for mainstream students. We have a really active PTA both at the prep school and senior school. And I'd say the thing that underpins that PTA is support. One of the new systems that was implemented this year by our PTA at the prep school was a shared document where parents and the school could not only sort of discuss things at various different meetings and welcome them and having events and things like that, but they're able to share books, they're able to share activities that have been successful, they're able to share holidays that were good, clubs, external holiday clubs that have worked for their child. They're able to talk about professionals that they respect and have worked well for their child. And really, it's about information sharing and supporting each other. It's a really lovely community that the two schools have managed to create, one where hopefully our parents feel supported and are supported by each other as well.
What paths do the pupils, I know there's no typical child, I think it's slightly unfair to say that, but what range of paths can you give us some examples do pupils go on to after leaving Abingdon House? I think that would be something parents would always be thinking about, kind of what next?
Absolutely. And as you said, there is no sort of regular student or regular path, and there's so many different flight paths. So some of our students will return to mainstream before they get to the qualification stage. If they get to the qualification stage with us, we offer 3 GCSEs and a range of 9 level 2 qualifications. Now, there's a reason behind offering so many level 2 qualifications, and that's because of entry requirements going on to, again, mainstream college courses. So the entry requirements get onto level 3 courses, which is the ability equivalent of an AS and A level, is usually to pass your English and maths, either GCSE or level 2, and then have 3 or more level 2 qualifications on top of that. So our students have the ability to access many more qualifications at a level 2 level, which means that they can go on to level 3 vocational courses, or they can go on to study some AS or A levels. Last year, we had a student go on to study level 3 cybersecurity, which was fantastic. Had students that have gone on to study other IT courses and some courses at a level 3 level, which are more to do with childcare and those kind of more nurturing aspects of education. We do have some students that have gone on to study some A levels, not a huge amount of students, but there have been a few that have gone on to that. And then we have students that have gone on to study at lower levels, so level 1 on level 2 qualifications, again at mainstream or special needs colleges within various different environments.
Looking forwards, obviously you're in your first year. What are your plans and hopes for the future of Abingdon House?
It's a continuation of what we're doing at the moment. It's making sure that we can create meaningful outcomes for all of our students. That's at the heart of everything that we do. Our cohort is going to change. It's inevitable. We're going to have different students coming through our doors. It's making sure that we're a school that can remain dynamic and shift with the cohorts and make sure that the students are making as much progress as possible holistically, and we achieve those meaningful outcomes no matter who it is that is coming through our doors at the start of the academic year. So for us, it's about making sure we can be adaptable, we can be flexible, and we can be the right school for the students at that time.
It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Rory, and I look forward to coming in hopefully in the near future and seeing Abingdon House in action. Thank you very much for giving up your time.
Thank you so much for having me, Chloe, and you are always welcome at Abingdon House School.